Okay, everyone, welcome to today's episode, and we're joined by Shropshire Revolution head coach, Neil Holtschke. And today's topic is going to be, in my opinion, a fantastic topic for all UK coaches, transitioning from playing to coaching. Something that we've spoken about many, many times, and it's obviously stuff like that this channel's for. And I'm a big fan of this subject, so I'm looking forward to what Neil's going to say and what he's going to put across. So, as normal, Neil, without further ado, thank you for joining me, Coach. I appreciate you jumping on and giving me your time and as you do everything you do. I will let you take over for me and I'll jump in where needed, fella. So, without further ado, over to you, Coach.
Okay, thank you very much, Coach. Thanks for the opportunity to present to the channel as well. So it's all about, as you say, all about giving back, and doing what we can. So, well, a little bit of an introduction about myself. So my name's Neil Holtschke. I'm the head coach currently of the Shropshire Revolution. And as I say, I'm kind of active on Twitter as well with the coaching community there. So at Neil Holtschke is my Twitter handle. So if ever anybody wants to catch up afterwards, please feel free to do so. A little bit about myself and sort of my coaching career, or Britball career, I guess. 2006 was my rookie season. I was young once. I found out about American football in the UK, so decided I'd go down, not knowing a huge amount about the sport. Played for sort of 6 or 7 seasons in total, mostly on the offensive line, dabbled a little bit on the D line, again, as you do in Britball, sort of moving around. 2012 was sort of my first exposure to coaching. So the Rev at that time were looking at setting up a youth team. So I kind of just cut my coaching teeth, running a few drills for some of the youth guys at that point. But 2013 was when I sort of officially transitioned to player coach. And actually it was under yourself, Coach, under your sort of tenure as offensive coordinator for the club. So a transition to player coach, which was my sort of starting point from that playing into coaching. 2013 as well, I was also an assistant coach at the Wolverhampton University team that was sort of going on at that point as well. 2014 season, I was getting old. I decided it was time to hang up my cleats, and I retired as a player. And that's when I sort of transitioned away from player coaching into a full-time non-playing coach with the offensive line. And then Britball being as it is, middle of 2015 season, there I am as the offensive line coach. And I find that there's a hole in the team for the offensive coordinator position. So whilst I didn't feel ready for it at the time, my name was in the hat. I ended up with that position, held that for 3.5 seasons. 2019 was my first season as head coach. We finished 6-4 that season, had a run into the playoffs as well, which in Division 1 was the first time for the Rev, and I think the highest in the club history. So a pretty successful first season head coach. Unfortunately, COVID-19 has happened for 2020, but we'll move on. So that's just a little bit about myself. But enough about me. What am I here to talk about today? Well, sort of Coach and his channel here is always about trying to give back what we can to the Britball community. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the transition from playing into coaching, and really just some advice, just how to make that step. Specifically, I was just going to talk about connecting with your players and the importance of doing that. Talk a little bit as well about designing some drills, just some advice, things I've learned over the last sort of 6 years of coaching. Talk a bit about helping your coordinator, which is really important, especially in the amateur level here in the UK. You know, we are all amateur coaches, and the coordinators, they have a lot on their plate, a lot of work to do. To help with a successful program. So anything that other coaches can do to help a coordinator just makes things run a lot smoother. Talk a little bit about the coach's kit bag, essentials to bring to practice every week, and then also just a little bit about networking. So those are sort of the key topics. This is my coaching ladder. This is kind of where I'm sort of aiming this presentation, admittedly, this evening. So we've got there the head coach and the coordinators right at the top of the ladder. I'm just going to talk really about the new positional coach. So really the guys, it's just advice for people transitioning from that playing into the coaching role. So real sort of bottom run of the ladder sort of stuff. Just a few sort of hints, tips, advice. I guess the reality, certainly for a program like Shropshire, we have to grow our own coaches. So the population in Shropshire isn't a huge amount. So the reality is, if we want the program to survive and to develop coaches for the future, we essentially have to bring them. We have to pick up on the retired players and keep them within the club, and rather than them just hanging up their cleats and going off and leaving the sport, we really need to try and get them into the coaching. So this is something that's quite sort of important for us, and I suspect, I'm hoping it might be useful for a lot of clubs up and down the country. So before we start, I guess I've got a few just top tips really. So before we press that big start button, I guess a lot of people might decide, right, actually I really fancy coaching. Might still play for the time being, but ultimately they sort of have an ambition to coach within the next year or so. So just a few top tips really before we start. And the first thing I'd always say to everybody is just sort of be yourself. Don't try to be something that you're not. There might be times where you have to, because you are now coach, you might have to be a little bit assertive. You might have to use a slightly different style of language because basically you are sort of helping to run things. Certainly for myself, I found that coaching offensive line, it was quite a strange transition because the 5-6 guys that I played with for 5 or 6 years, all of a sudden now I was coach. So I think it's really important to get the buy-in of players, especially in that player-coach transition, and say, just be yourself, because if you try and be something you're not, the players are going to think that you're on some sort of power trip. They'll like you for being you, and they'll know you as you for the playing time that you may have had. So don't turn into somebody else or try to be something you're not when you start coaching. Never underestimate the importance of planning. Essentially when you're coaching, you're representing your program, and ultimately a program, such as Shropshire, we try and sell a product to our players. The reality is in Britball, there's a lot of teams these days, and there's a lot of competition within clubs. So we appreciate that if we want to retain our players and draw new players, that we have to sell them a product. We have to sell them a reason to become members and pay subs to Shropshire Revolution, because if our product's not very good and we don't do that, the reality is they'll end up going somewhere else. So planning is really important as part of that. Don't turn up to training and you've got 10 guys, 20 guys or whatever it might be, and you sort of just stood around, what can we do this week? It just looks rank amateur, and it shows, quite frankly. So never underestimate the importance of planning. Another piece of advice is you don't know everything. You might think you do, but you don't. And there'll always be times where you think you have everything thought out, and something happens, and you're kind of just left a little bit, well, I'm not quite sure what the answer is, or somebody will ask a question, you don't know the answer. Don't try and bullshit it. We're all human. We don't know everything. I'd say the way you need to approach it, just have the attitude that you're prepared to learn. And you'll make mistakes, learn off those mistakes. Everybody makes them. If there is something you don't know, ask one of the more senior coaches, and I say, just be prepared to learn in your coaching journey. Fundamentals are, and I've put there, always will be your friend. One thing I've learned is that players actually enjoy doing fundamental drills. Ultimately players come to training because they want to be coached. They want to get better, and they want to leave a session feeling that they're a better player at the end than at the start. Fundamentals are absolutely key to that, and I don't think you can ever have a bad session where your drills are comprised of drills working on fundamental skills. So whether that's for receivers, whether it's for the whole squad, whether that's just basic tackling and blocking skills across the team, or whether for receivers that's fundamental specifically around catching, or fundamental specifically around routes, O-line, it might be zone step. If a player is working on fundamental drills, they'll always leave the session feeling they've worked hard and they've actually learned something, and that's kind of how you get the buy-in and how ultimately you keep people attending training. especially, you know, when we're into the season, we're training midweek. So always come back to fundamentals. One lesson that you'll learn, and we all learn pretty hard, is that our coaching superpowers just don't work. Okay, what I mean by that is you can have this great idea. We come in to do maybe on offense. I'm an offensive guy, so let's use offense as an example. You know, I want to install this particular play, and I'm basically saying, you know, because I've learned this play somewhere. Right, guys, we're going to run, I don't know, let's say smash. We're going to run a hitch, a corner, quarterback, you know, one step drop, read the cornerback, throw the ball. You know, you might have this sort of direction, or this is what you need to do, but you've got to remember that we've got to coach these guys how to do all of this. You know, us just turning up with this idea and expecting guys to be able to implement it and getting frustrated or cross when it's not working. You know, we have to appreciate that if we want to install something, we need to go back to the very, very basics. Again, it comes back to that fundamental point, I guess. You know, so if you do want to do something specific, just be very prepared to work on all the little details that will allow you to execute whatever it is you want. Don't just expect people to be able to do it. And probably the most important one, I'd say, really, is to make sure you have fun. You've got to enjoy coaching if you're going to be doing it well and over a sustained period of time. The reality is that the period on the practice field, that's probably what 25% of the work that goes into coaching ultimately. You know, if you've never been experienced to it before, a lot of work actually happens off the field. So whereas players might only see football as being a 2 or 3 hour activity a week, you know, for coaching, the reality is it's a bit more than that. So you've got to enjoy it, otherwise you're just not going to stick with it. You're not going to want to develop, and your sort of development's going to be ultimately affected. So those are my sort of top tips. I don't know if you have anything else particularly there, Coach.
I do like the last one. I have fun, because at the end of the day, I think at the start of your career as a positional coach, that's probably the only time in your coaching career where it's just about having fun and making guys better. I think the further along you go, the more and more stressful it gets, to a point where if you're in one of the top 2 jobs, then obviously the stress is on your shoulder more to a point. What I was just going to reflect on was a point farther back, is compared to when you first started your journey as a coach. If you remember that 13 in your first year, do you think we ask a lot more of our positional coaches now than we did back then? Because if you just think of our own program right now, how we get our positional guys involved in a lot of aspects of our offense now, compared to like when my first year as offensive coordinator and your first year as a coach. It was a lot different to how it's done now. It's like basically you did the drills, I did everything else, and then we come together. Where I feel now it feels a lot more smooth as a staff. But do you think it was a lot easier back then, 6-7 years ago, as a coach coming through the ranks, or is that basically club specific? Obviously, everybody's different at different levels. How's your thought on that, Coach?
Yeah, I think culturally across the game, there's been a big change in the last, it's probably 10 years or so now. You know, sort of technology is prevalent. You've kind of got the Facebook groups. You know, other coaches are putting up content about how they do things, and I think you know, certainly when I started playing, the coaches at the time were people who played back in sort of the 90s. You know, that's what it was, and obviously the game back then was quite different. You know, over time, and sort of by the time the 2010s came around, you know, filming became a thing. Prior to that, we didn't really have film. But filming became a thing, and then in the last few years, something like Huddle. So the expectation now from guys is, you know, if they want to be a member of your club, they want, as I sort of touched on, you know, they want to be developed and coached. And with things like Huddle around, if you're not using it, you know, the guys will get quite disheartened, and you know, just, well, somebody else down the road will, and you'll ultimately leak players to another program who are doing these things. So I think you know, and if the positional coaches aren't doing any extra work, then you're kind of dumping on the coordinator to do all this. And if you've got 20, 25 guys on your offensive roster, you know, trying to do notes that cover all 25 is just impossible for one person. You know, especially as we all have day jobs. You know, we just don't have that time. So I think, yeah, I think there is more for positional coaches to do, but I still think there's the same element of fun, and you know, I don't think that the role has changed that much, but I think there is a potential change. Yeah. Okay, so I mean, I guess once let's say those are my top tips. So I guess if we are ready to press the button, we'll go and do it. Oh, look, the graphic works. Fantastic. So the first thing I was just going to talk about really was connecting with players. So we're a new positional coach, or we are a player who has transitioned into a player coach. So one thing I'd always suggest is you create a positional contact group, so that you can liaise with your guys throughout the week. You know, something on a mobile device. WhatsApp is fantastic. I mean, I've got an iPhone 5. I'm quite old school on the tech front, but I'm in groups with certain players and coaches on WhatsApp. Facebook Messenger is another great facility for group chat. Just get all your guys into that. It just makes sort of communication so much easier. I mean, it seems pretty obvious, but one of the biggest advantages is that you can just track attendance at upcoming practices. You know, it's a help the coordinator out. So certainly with O-line, you know, if you send a message out, so if we're going to practice on a Sunday morning, message will go out Thursday morning. Hey guys, who's at training on Sunday? You know, within a day or so, we kind of get the messages. Positional coach then can feed back to the coordinator. Oh, O-line, we're going to have 6 of us there on Sunday, and then as often happens in Brit Bowl, you know, it might be that, oh, actually, Dave's on holiday, Sam's working, and Smith is, you know, doing something with his gran or whatever it is. Coach, we've only got 4 O-line on Sunday. You know, not ideal. It does happen. It's Brit Bowl. It's the reality. But at least if you know that ahead of time, you, as certainly as the head coach, as the coordinators, you can kind of plan a session around the fact you know you've only got 4 O-line there that week. So it might be that you drag somebody off the D to cover. It might be that you don't scrimmage that week. You know, you can design a session around it. And for something that takes 2 or 3 minutes, it's invaluable. Being in contact with the players as well. Sometimes, you know, guys might have a query on a scheme issue. So I sit in our club's offensive line group, just because I haven't been removed from when I became coordinator and head coach. But sometimes, you know, there'll be some annotations on huddle. One of the guys will post into the group, oh, play 24, the note says such and such. And there'll be like a little discussion amongst the guys with it. But again, in the format of something like a WhatsApp group or a Facebook Messenger, everybody in that player group is party to it. And often it drives a little bit of a discussion, a little wrinkle gets ironed out, and away we go. And then also the probably most important one really is the social interaction. So again, this is an amateur sport. We don't get paid. We pay to play this sport in the UK. So for the guys, a big part of it is that they get on with their teammates. So it is important, you know, so there are often jokes or whatever posted around in these player groups, but being connected with your players, I'd say is really important. And for something, you know, just something simple like setting up a WhatsApp group can be really effective. And just on that communication point, one thing I'd say is that it's, you know, it's perfectly okay to be friends with the players. I sort of say myself, when I transitioned from player to player coach, kind of found that like probably the hardest step on the coaching ladder, because, you know, all of a sudden the guys who I've played with for 5 or 6 seasons, really good mates with, you know, on a Sunday now they're calling me coach, and it kind of feels a bit weird that we both played the same amount of time, you know, but say it's absolutely fine to be friends with the players. This is a social sport. It is an amateur sport. There are friendship groups, but just remember that on the training field, that as a positional coach, you're the leader, you're the alpha. You know, so you know you are in charge. But as I say, that's just a couple of comments I'd have on connecting with players. Just talk a little bit about designing drills. Again, just some advice and things I've learned over time around drill design. The first one, I suppose, is don't be a fanboy. Kind of what I mean by that is when I first started coaching the Revolution youth team, I was asked to come down and help with a few sessions. So I was sort of like, oh, really keen, really eager. First thing I went and did is I was like on YouTube, Googling all these drills, and I was thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, you know. But ultimately, it was just a collection, mishmash of drills that I like the look of. One thing I'd always say is, make sure that your drills have a purpose, and importantly as well, make sure that they're relevant to that week's install, or they're relevant to a recap of something you did in the prior week. So as an example, if I'm a rookie wide receiver coach, offensive coordinator says we're going to install smash concept this Sunday, so whatever the play name that might be, right? So I have to think, right, I'm rookie receiver coach, we're going to install smash, so I need my guys to be able to run hitch and a corner. Well, if I design drills relevant to running hitches and corners, when we come to install time, I've given my guys the tools to be successful when the offensive coordinator wants to install that smash play. If I've mucked around with bubble screen blocking, then I've essentially wasted my indie time, because then when we come to do the install, I've got to teach my guys, everything they need to know in order to install our smash play. So make sure your drills are relevant. Another thing I'd say as well is I always apply I call it like a primary and a secondary focus to the drill. So if I'm designing a drill, I always make sure there's one thing I want to get from it. There's one primary purpose for that drill, because I've only got one set of eyes, so I can only look at one thing at a time. So if say, for example, I'm doing a drill that's around running the hitch route, my primary focus is the guys are running to 5-yard depth, they're planting outside foot and turning towards the quarterback. That's my focus of the drill, to make sure that the hitch is properly executed. The secondary focus then might just be how they're catching the ball. But what I can't do is have my eyes on the receiver, have my eyes on things downfield and elsewhere. Say, just make sure that you're working on one specific thing for a drill. Remember, fundamentals are always your friends. You can never, in my opinion, have a bad session where what you do is working on fundamental skills. You can't do it. I always go back to fundamentals time and time again. I'd always recommend that you develop a bit of a drill library, and this is something that you'll develop over time. So whenever I run a drill, I just make a note of it in my notebook. That helps with planning in future sessions, because I can see what we've done. Also, it gives you a bit of inspiration as well. If you're thinking, right, what drill could I run this week? Well, you can have a look back through your notebook. Well, that was a good one. It just helps. And the more drills that you run and the more experience you get as a coach, you'll sort of develop that mentally anyway. But I find it useful just to have it written down. Hidden cardio is great, but for me, a drill that's just a cardio focus is a waste of field time. Some people might disagree with this one, but the reality is, when we're training on a 3G Astro field, turf, or we're hiring a field, the club itself is paying money to hire that. So I don't want to send my guys on hill sprints, because to me that's just a waste of time. Something like hidden cardio would be sprinting through 2 cones at the end of the drill. So let's say, we're going to run slants with our receivers. Well, let's execute the slant, let's catch the ball, but then let's sprint out the back of the drill. A little bit of hidden cardio. O-line, we might be doing some double team blocking. Well, extend the period that they're blocking downfield. So rather than blowing the whistle after 4 yards, get the guys going 8 yards downfield. Just build in a little bit of hidden cardio. But as I say, a drill that's purely a cardio drill for me is just a waste of field time. It does have its place in pre-season or in strength and conditioning sessions, but I certainly wouldn't waste a part of a 2-hour weekly practice on it. But say hidden cardio, fantastic. Another thing as well is just I always consider whether my drill's kitted or non-kitted. So at the Revolution, we start our sessions with a 10-minute team warm-up. After that, we go into our indie time, and the indie coaches usually have half an hour. So we kind of split that down. The first 10 minutes or so is almost like an extension to the warm-up. So it might be that you want to work on certain cone drills or bag drills that sort of develop footwork. We'll put them at the start of the session, and it's a transition from your team warm-up into almost like a graduated warm-up, and then work on your blocking or your catching technique after that. It just makes the drills sort of flow, and the progression from one to another just seem a bit more logical. Sometimes if you have a catching drill, then you go to a footwork drill, and then you go to some other catching drill or technique drill, it kind of just spoils the momentum of your session. So I'd say, come up with your drills, what you want to do that week, but just have a think about the order that you want to place them in, and whether they're kitted, non-kitted, just group them together. Use the field time for reps. we're on the field 2.5 hours, if we're lucky, a week in pre-season, you know, so field time, let's use it for reps and use the film time for teaching. That's not to say that if you're your rookie receiver coach running your hitches, to come back to that example, you know, there's absolutely no issue saying, oh, Dave, that was 4 yards, you got to run 5, or, you know, if we're running slants, oh, Jones, that's, you know, you've run 8 yards there, you need to, you know, you can have that quick command, that quick correct. But what you don't want to do is, if somebody executes a drill and executes it incorrectly, don't then sort of talk to them about it too much, because your focus then is on that one particular person. You're not watching the rest of the guys going through their drills. If you want to get into detailed teaching, use film time midweek to do that. You know, use the field time to get as many reps as you can. Another thing as well is I just try and keep a drill to 5-minute max. I find guys lose interest after that. They want to move on to something else. You know, so if you've got a 20-minute session to fill, we'll come up with 4 or 5 different drills. Makes it nice, sharp, snappy. You know, keeps it fresh for the guys. And then most importantly, get everyone involved, which I guess comes into that using the field time for reps. Rep your whole depth. Get everybody in that receiver core running your hitch routes. You know, don't slow the drill down. Get them nice and fast. Film it if you need to. Come back to it. Do your teaching. But those are my sort of key points really around designing drills. I don't know if you got anything you'd add to that, Coach.
The 2 things that I wanted to just cover there quickly, Coach, was you spoke about the social media in terms of like Facebook and WhatsApp for the players. I think one of the most valuable tools for coaches is to be in groups as coaches and to talk to each other. Just to know that what we're doing this week and what we're planning, and it might be a little bit further ahead than what you're talking about right now. It might be a little bit more in depth. But if you know what we're installing on a Tuesday, you've got then like 5 days to put together your plan of what you want to execute on a Sunday. And whether it's a help or it's a tip for anybody else, but I like what we did last season at the Revolution, where we basically, between myself and yourself, is that we gave the offense an hour. And then I gave my coaches 30 minutes to do whatever you feel you need to do to get your guys better in that time. Because at the end of the day, once we're getting outside and we're out of the dome and we've got the basics in, they know their group and they know what they need, what their plan. And I think it was a great value of time for us to each do our own little segment and use what we need to do rather than be so regimented. And then because we needed to get what got out of that 30 minutes and then came together, and then we came together as an offensive unit, and then we came together as on-air stuff. I think that the way we utilised that hour time last season really benefited us. I'm not sure it's used a lot across the board, but I felt that it was something that we took advantage of last season, especially with the numbers that we had.
Yeah, it comes down to that planning. You know, you got to be prepared, because you know, if you're on an offensive staff with 4 or 5 guys, if there's no sort of pre-planning, you know, you're going to turn up on the Sunday. You're going to have your coaches chatting around going, what we're going to do today. Your players are going to pick up on that. It's going to look crap, to be honest, you know. And it kind of goes back as well to what I said about, you know, it's important for coaches to have fun, because the reality is that the 2.5 hours or whatever it is on the field on a Sunday morning, you know, that's just the bit that the players physically see. But the reality of coaching is you're probably spending at least twice that in the rest of the week, whether it's contacting your guys in your various chat groups, or whether it's on the coaches chat group, or whether it's learning about that week's install or reviewing the film. You know, so there is quite a time commitment expected of coaches. So you've got to enjoy it. Otherwise, you're just not going to do it, and then it's just going to snowball into something bad.
I do think, however, if you do go into coaching, you've got to be prepared to give up some of your time. I don't think you can't go into it thinking I'm just going to go on a Sunday and just rock up and have a lot of fun. You've got to be prepared that, like, on a Sunday night, we know that our practice film's up online. We're expected to watch that, break it down, give feedback to our guys, and then from there, I'm going to be giving all you guys next week's install, and I expect you to know what we're doing by the time we get round to it. And you know that on Tuesday or Wednesday, we're going to have a live clinic or an uploaded video for our players to watch and get into, and we expect our coaches to be on board with all of that and get into it. So I think I'm not sure how that's done lower down in Div 2 and Associate, but I think once you get into a team of Division 1 and higher, then you have to expect that your workload is increased, and if you can't commit that time and be that involved, then you might need to just like reevaluate what you want to do a little bit. But I think there's certainly no elite aspect to what we're doing, but it's definitely time consuming, and it definitely puts constraints on you as a coach, even at amateur level, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Which I guess comes on then nicely onto the helping your coordinator. So that, again, as you know, this is something we expect of our positional coaches. You know, because as coach was sort of saying there is a time commitment, certainly at the coordinator level and the head coaching level. You know, so any work that the positional coaches can help with and take away from the coordinators, it just makes everybody's life better. So some of the sort of key advice I'd give in terms of helping the coordinator is just keep them informed of any attendance expectations. So again, that probably touches on the use of your sort of WhatsApp and Facebook sort of groups, really. You know, if you can say to coach that, you know, oh, this week, coach, you've got 7 receivers attending, you know, the coach then knows that, right, okay, well, I can plan a session that's going to, you know, I can have some good receiver drills. I can maybe do a pass skeleton. You know, it helps the coaches plan the session if we know what's who's attending. Whereas if we're not aware of that, we'll plan something, and then it'll be like, oh God, we've got 3 receivers this week. You know, nightmare. So if we know about it, we can adapt, because if we knew we're going to have 3 receivers, then we'll run our 2 back stuff that week. You know, so that's really, really important. Understanding the week's install, and again, I've touched on it, that just ensure that you design your indie time to complement the install. So as Coach Butler sort of said at the Revolution, so because I'm the head coach, I designed the practice session in its entirety in terms of the time allocation. So what I do each week is I say to the offensive and defensive coordinators, right, you've got an hour in part of the session. That hour, I have no input in whatsoever. That's purely on the coordinators, how they want to split that hour up. But the reality is half of it will probably be used for indie time, where the positional coaches will be working with their positional group. So if the offensive coordinator wants to install a smash play that particular week, if that's on the install, then we need the receiver coach to be working on the hitch and the corner routes, and the quarterback coach, we need to be working on that step and that read, so that when we come to indie time, or install time rather, each of the positional groups have got their little skills together, and we can fit it all together in install. And then the way we work is that will then flow through the whole session. So we would then expect to see it in the scrimmage time at the end. But understanding the week's install ahead of time is important, so that you plan your drills that are appropriate. Because I say, if we're installing smash, and the offensive line coach has gone and focused on zone all session, then we haven't got any pass pro scheme for the O line to work on. So it's kind of everything grinds to a halt and just looks crap. We expect our positional coaches to contribute to huddle annotation. So we try and film as many drills as we can, and as I said on a previous slide as well, you know, use the field time to get your reps in. Use the time midweek to do your sort of detailed technical coaching. So film your drill, upload it to Huddle, then you can watch it back at your leisure. But on the field, get as many reps in as you can. But obviously, the benefit of something like Huddle, you only get out of it what you put into it. So if all you do is upload the film, then don't expect players to get better from looking at Huddle. What you have to do is have the film uploaded. The coaches then actually go through, you know, there's lots of tools you can use to highlight, annotate, make notes, you know, do whatever you want. But say you get out of something like Huddle what you put into it. So we want our positional coaches to help. And another thing as well is just remember that you're there to teach the coordinator's playbook. You know, so you always need to act as their advocate on the practice field. You know, so if you don't particularly like a play, but we're installing it, you know, it's not your place to say that to players. You know, when I was offensive coordinator, I designed a playbook. My expectation of positional coaches then is that they're going to help me deliver that playbook. If it all goes Pete Tong, we don't do very well, then that's fine. That's my sort of role on the line, if you like. I'll be the fall guy, but make sure that you understand the coordinator's vision. Essentially, your job as a positional coach is there to deliver that vision for the coordinator. You know, and it's as a coordinator, it's highly appreciated when you've got the coaching staff on your side as well and work with you. It's not to say that you can't feed back to the coordinator. You know, if you make an observation or if you've got any queries about anything, you can do that. And I always like to challenge, because I always thought if I come up with a play, you know, if I get that challenge back, I can think about it, reflect on it. I might tweak something. You know, we're all human ultimately, but essentially at the end of the day, my positional coaches were there working for me, and we're trying to install my sort of vision. So that's just all I'd say around helping the coordinator there. The coach's kit bag, it's probably a little bit of a basic topic, but I'd always say, you know, when you're turning up to training, look like a coach. You know, I'm always of the mindset that if you dress appropriately and you feel like a coach, you'll act like a coach. You know, team branded attire is good. I've put there no jeans. I personally hate your mind. You know, I think if you turn up to practice and I'm wearing a jeans and a t-shirt and I'm going to be coaching, what are my players going to be thinking of that appearance? You know, they're going to assume that, you know, I just look casual. I just don't like it. I think if you're gonna turn up and coach, they look like a coach and feel like a coach, and you'll ultimately act like a coach. In terms of what I bring with me, my kit bag, whistle is so important. There's been multiple times where I've turned up and I've left the whistle either in the car, or worse, I've left it on the kitchen table. Absolute nightmare. Then you have to go scrounging for whistles. And with something like COVID-19 around, you don't want to be doing that in 2021. So always make sure that you've got a whistle. So important. Notebook and pencil. As a positional coach, you know, I'd always learn something at practice and I'd scribble it down. You know, so coach would, we'd be installing a particular play. So I'd always just jot down the main points of the play, or if we were having a little conflab before the session, you know, and coach was sort of saying, right, I want the O-line to do this on this particular play. Right, I just quickly make a note of it. So useful. It seems so simple, but it's useful. Make sure you always bring your session plan. So that you know the timing of things. At the Revolution, we're quite high tempo in our practices. We move from one drill to another quite quickly. So just having the session plan in your pocket, you can just quickly refer to it. I still do it as the head coach because I still forget what I've written in the week. One really useful thing that I keep getting out every single week is a screwdriver. They don't tell you this one on the BAFCA level 1 course. You need a posi drive screwdriver, so like the cross thread. Having one of them in your kit bag is so useful, because there's so many times that you get, coach, my helmet's come loose, have you got a screwdriver? Well, I'd be like, yes, I have, it's in my bag. You know, so useful. You know, keep the reps going so you don't lose a player for half an hour with faulty kit.
That's definitely a head coach task, coach. That's definitely a head coach's job. That's definitely not a coordinator job. That's definitely a head coach's job.
Yeah, well, if there was multiple screwdrivers around it, it'd make my life easier. So I always bring my own water bottle, don't want to drink from the club ones. And it is thirsty work coaching as well. You do actually, you know, on the hot days, or you know, it is sort of quite hard work. So just make sure you've got your own as well. They tell you this one on the level 1 courses, but a fully charged mobile phone for emergency use is something I always make sure I have. And then also just a mini whiteboard and pen. You can kind of get these small ones. So useful because especially on O-line, they come at practice going, oh, the defense is lining up differently this week, and you know, defenses, they're there to confuse offenses, so there's always something different we see each week. So having something like a mini whiteboard and pen, you can just draw through things and explain things so much easier. So that's what I'd always bring with me. Another thing I'd always say is just get to practice early. You know, you're the positional coach. I always try to get there 30 minutes early. Sounds like a lot. I appreciate that sometimes at midweek practices, because people work, that's not always possible, but that's what I always aim for. Get there early, get your area of the pitch set up, and look organised, look like you know what you're doing. And trust me, it takes a lot of stress off if if you've got your area all set up before your guys are ready to do their indie time. And another thing I tend to do as well, pre-practice, is I get my players to bring their kit over to their station area. So when I was an O-line coach, we in the winter, we always trained at the TCAP Superdome, but the O-line are always have been in one particular corner of the dome. So when we're in the dome, that's the O-line corner. We bring all our kit over there, so that when players are then chatting to their mates and whatever, mucking around pre-practice, as soon as that whistle goes, we head over to the O-line station. We've got everything there ready. They're not halfway down the hall mucking around in their bags. It just helps sort of make things efficient and just flow so much easier. And I just put there, just include plenty of water bottles at your station. So there's just a few sort of essential tips there for when you're at practice. Some of them are pretty obvious. There's nothing there that's rocket science, but just some useful things that I've learned over the years. Just another final piece of advice really is just network. You're a new coach, developing networks is so important, and arguably it's never been so easy with technology the way it is. The BAFCA Level 1 courses, they're a great place to start. And obviously now there's all the USA football resources that are bolted onto that. Great sort of learning tools there. In terms of developing networks, you'll meet coaches at these Level 1 courses, but presumably for the foreseeable, they'll be sort of online. But ask to visit other programs. I've done this a few times myself. We've been invited down to Birmingham Lions on several occasions. It's always useful to see how another program does things, and I'm a big believer that coaches should be sharing knowledge within the UK, and there's also a lot of knowledge to share and to be shared. There's some very, very good UK coaches around, and for the most part, if you ask to attend somebody else's practice, you would probably be accepted, and the invitation will be there. I know that certainly applies for the Revolution. If anybody ever wanted to see how we do things, you can take a lot from it. You take the good bits, the things you like from multiple visits, and you sort of develop your own style and over time. Another thing I'd say is try and find a mentor. I mean, especially if you're specifically interested in one aspect of football. And I put this here because I think back to how you started coaching. I always remember you saying that, because obviously you're an air raid guy, and Coach Reed at the time was somebody who was very much air raid. Yep. And when you started your coaching sort of journey, you kind of were close to Coach Reed because you wanted to learn the air raid off him. Yep. And as when I sort of started my coaching journey, so obviously you asked me to coach the offensive line when you were OC, and again the sort of the air raid is an offense that I was quite interested in, the spread, so I learned off you, but there are people out there who if there is something you're particularly interested in, just go and speak to them, and people will be quite happy to mentor. The Twitter community is fantastic. The last sort of 3, 4, 5 years, that's really sort of exploded. The ability to communicate with American coaches has never been so easy. Again, a lot of them are very sort of willing to share. And if you've got, there's lots of coaches who run lots of different schemes. So if you're interested in running something like run and shoot, somebody like Coach Clark would be great for giving you stuff like that. There's Coach Singleton, Mackie with the spread guys. There's loads of coaches in the Twitter community. Just hook one of them up, ask questions, follow the content they provide. And then just, I guess, UK resources, things such as Coaches Connected, Coach. I guess one big thing I've always learned from the BAFCA convention, I've always sometimes found it difficult to find things that then apply to me, or that are relevant to me. Sometimes I find they're a little bit too high level, or some of them go above my head. I'm not particularly smart, but find resources and find coaches you can follow who you can learn things off that you can then apply to your own practices. Sometimes some of the lower league, lower level college clubs and coaches are quite good for that. And again, anybody in the UK Obviously, they've got a very good knowledge of Britball and Europe as well. You know, a lot of the coaches on the European teams seem to be very sort of willing to share how they do things. So, let's say, just build your networks, you know, and it'll stand you in good stead going forward. Anything on that one, Coach?
Not really, Coach. I mean, I will touch on the Coaches Connected thing. Is that I've said it on previous videos, but the whole point of this is, as you pointed out, there's just a lack of UK and European guys doing stuff, sharing it between each other. It's like that we've got some kind of hidden secrets that we don't want to give out. Whereas I'm all for guys like Rick and Murray at the Olympians who are sharing the stuff, and anybody who wants to share and jump on, this is what it's all about, and pass it on the knowledge. And obviously, we could talk about a million things on here right now in different subjects, and we'd be well without us talk about anything. But the fact that we talk about this subject because it helps young coaches is what we need to do. And those guys coming through who have no experience, who maybe are a Division 2 player or a uni player, who are looking to get on, they might be able to watch this and take away one thing. As I said before, is that we're not trying to make anything look super fancy and all that kind of stuff. Literally, is one coach asking his brothers, his other coaches to help out and pass on what we know. There and father there, and it's guys like yourself who will jump on and give up their time. That's what, for me, it's all about. And if we could do more of this and get more of it on board, that for me is a good thing for our coaching community in the United Kingdom. Is that we're going to make us better for longer, and that's what for me it's all about. And I touch on finding a mentor, even if it's not a mentor. I think keeping relationships is key, because I know that I've left the Revolution, but we've spoke on a daily basis throughout those course of the years. In terms where you first took over as an OC, we exchanged ideas, and sometimes you just need a vent. Sometimes you just need somebody to say, actually, you know what, it helps. And I was lucky. I had, like I said, when I first started coaching, I knew what I wanted to do. It just happened that the Revolution were close to go and visit and join. And then I was looking to get a second mentor. So you're lucky to get those things. But keeping relationships with people who want to help you is vital. You know, if you ask, 9 people out of 10 will help you, and they'll be there for you. It's only the chosen few who think they're bigger than the rest of the world that won't. But you'll find that if you're a genuine person and they're genuine, they will help you. And I think hopefully it's not only that, it's both ways. I mean, we've spoken many times on many subjects. It's helped both ways. Sometimes you just need to talk to somebody else, not directly involved. And it's those kind of guys where you can go, actually, you know what, coach, that's a better idea. And you move forward from there. So I think, yeah, I totally agree, coach. I think the resources and the mentor is big. And obviously, as you said, Twitter, it's out there, and you know, we're all on there and we're all answering the questions. And if you, as coach pointed out, if you ever want to jump onto a Revolution practice, our doors are open offensively, defensively, everything. We'll give you. I'll give you a playbook. I just don't care. It's literally that simple. We don't disclose or hide anything. That's always been the way.
Yeah. So I guess with that, I mean, I guess for any sort of new coaches to the sport, it's just good luck, you know, and hopefully you'll have some success. I had to put this final slide in. So that's the crowning moment for me at the moment, was our Div 2 Bowl win. But you know, just good luck to any guys who are looking at making that transition to coaching. You know, this sport's quite unique. I always find that you certainly get out of it what you put into it. You know, the opportunity for lots of different experience as a coach is vast. You know, we've done things with this sport that I would never have done had I not been involved. So just enjoy the journey. Say good luck and thanks for your time this evening.
Well, Coach, that was a fantastic talk. I've got to be honest, relatable on so many levels, and I think the final slide there doesn't really depict your own journey, because your road was pretty quick and a few bumps in the road there in certain situations, like, you know, being thrown into it in the middle of 2014, in the middle of a Division 1 season where you had no players. You know, that's been thrown to the Lions, and you know, I think the stuff that you learn here and that we learned at our time at Wolverhampton, and you can take onto your coaching career, and you know, and go, we're not doing that again, or that we can learn from that aspect. And it's those things that get you to the moments like what you're showing there, where the good times come, where if you keep at it and you keep honing your craft, you get better. And I think, you know, it's great to see young British coaches coming through and wanting to be as good as they possibly can be. And I'm all for it. And I can't thank you enough for coming on board and doing a talk. And hopefully we get you back and talk about other subjects and more down the line, because I'm sure there's stuff that we could touch on more in depth in terms of roles and coordinator positions and head coaching positions. Being a first year head coach last year, and how that was another learning curve for yourself. Nothing's ever straightforward, and you soon learn that being a head coach means you are a water boy, first and foremost, more than anything else. Basically, once you get the coin toss over and done with, your day's over. And that's basically what it comes down to. But yeah, so I appreciate you coming on, coaching. It's been a fantastic watch. And as I always say, if one coach from the UK takes away one bit of information from this episode, then it's all been worthwhile. So I can't thank you enough, coach. I appreciate you, and as always, I've said before, you're one of my closest friends in the sport, and we've known each other for a long time, and long may continue. So thank you very much, coach, and I appreciate your time, fella.
Yeah, anytime, coach, anytime.
Thank you.